we must continue because we got to find out about the Epstein files. They were heavily promoted by the new administration, Pam Bondi, and a whole bunch of other people. And yet, when they were released the other day, it was like a bunch of golden children from the conservative influencer movement that have YouTube revenue coming out their ears. That's what I noticed. And legitimate people who have been researching on these topics and are knowledgeable about these things didn't get anywhere close to that. Rightfully so, because they would have all said, this is a bunch of bullshit and not played along with a dog and pony show, right? So you've got a captive audience of MAGA people who don't know any better, apparently. And we're going to go first with Mark Dice because I agree with his observation. That was a bunch of bullshit and nobody should be buying into that. And the real people who have been investigating these topics for the past 20 years, they deserve to see the documents as much as anybody else does. And maybe those things will be coming. Alina Hobbit did say that she loaded 12 boxes of the infamous boxes on Air Force One yesterday or something like that. So there might have been, because in this block, you're also going to understand New York field office is destroying documents. So there's a group of deep state FBI types that have had this and they don't want to give it up because they're traitors to the American people and they're afraid you're all going to find out and do something about it. So we'll check in with the clown show. And first with Mark Dice, then we'll get AJ from the Y-Files because he likewise called bullshit on this whole thing, and then we're going to get a Jimmy Dore who literally shows you how America got rickrolled with with this Epstein drop, and then we'll come back and comment.
We have to continue to examine yesterday's bogus release of the supposed Epstein files that embarrassed some very popular Twitter personalities who were brought to the White House and given binders of garbage documents that had already been published. Only the binders contained redacted documents, and the unredacted documents had been publicly available for many years. And as you can see, the look on their faces revealed that they actually thought that they were going to be breaking some news, that Attorney General Pam Bondi released the long-awaited Epstein client list and other information, only to unfortunately get egg on their face and look like a bunch of dupes. So the new Attorney General Pam Bondi sent a letter to Kash Patel, the new director of the FBI, demanding all of the files and pointing out the obvious fact that the FBI has been withholding them. And then Kash posted on Twitter saying the FBI is entering a new era, one that will be defined by integrity, accountability, and the unwavering pursuit of justice. There will be no cover-ups, no missing documents, and no stone left unturned, and anyone from the prior or current bureau who undermines this will be swiftly pursued. If there are gaps, we will find them. If records have been hidden, we will uncover them. And we will bring everything we find to the Department of Justice to be fully assessed and transparently disseminated to the American people as it should be. The oath we take is to the Constitution, and under my leadership, that promise will be upheld without compromise. Well, that's a nice pipe dream, Kash, because the files most likely won't be released. Or maybe some of them will be released, but then they'll discover that an unnamed, unknown bureaucrat destroyed the documents, just like Hillary Clinton and her staff destroyed the evidence of her email exchanges. And then maybe a couple will be released in what's called a limited hangout, which will not provide the full extent of what it is that Jeffrey Epstein was doing and who he was working for. And who he was working for is the big elephant in the room that none of the Conservative Inc. influencers who obtained these bogus documents, again, that were redacted and many years old, will dare touch. This, by the way, was an AI meme, but it really does illustrate the circus that these people are participating in. I haven't been watching Fox News much since they fired Tucker Carlson years ago now, who really was the only reason to watch Fox News. But I did tune in to see what Jesse Waters had to say, because I did see a clip of him interviewing Attorney General Pam Bondi just a few days ago, who, promised that the files are going to be released the next day. And you could just tell from the tone of her voice that it was a big nothing burger. Actually, worse than a nothing burger, it was a gigantic turd sandwich. But Jesse Waters, to his credit, did a fantastic segment last night about it.
Last night on Jesse Waters Primetime, Attorney General Pam Bondi said this.
What you're going to see, hopefully tomorrow, is a lot of flight logs, a lot of names, a lot of information, but it's pretty sick what that man did.
Again, the information that she put in those binders, that she duped those conservative influencers to release, was already publicly known for years.
So we were looking today to find out more about why the government's been so suspiciously protective of Jeffrey Epstein. This afternoon, a bunch of conservative influencers left a meeting at the White House with binders that said the Epstein files, phase 1. Once the binders were opened, people were able to see flight records and Epstein's Rolodex and a list of masseuses. The masseuses' names were blacked out, and the information from the flight logs wasn't new. Neither was the Rolodex. When we began to feel duped, Pam Bondi released a letter that says, basically, I was duped too. Bondi's demanding by 8 a.m. tomorrow morning that
this morning,
the FBI deliver everything to her office, including all records, audio, video recordings, all materials related to Epstein. And she ensures DOJ will disclose everything. And she's directing Patel to begin an immediate investigation into why the FBI isn't following orders. The FBI seized computers, surveillance videos, banking records, file cabinets, and photographs from all of Epstein's properties in New Mexico, the Virgin Islands, Palm Beach, and in New York. The Justice Department also gave Epstein a sweetheart non-prosecution deal 17 years ago. Where are those files?
And he got that deal because the key prosecutor on the case would later reveal that he was told that Epstein was, quote, intelligence, meaning, obviously, an intelligence operative. And he's just above the law, so just let him go.
Epstein was probably an intelligence asset, rumored to be working with the Israelis, maybe this country, probably other countries.
Much respect to Jesse Waters for daring to mention that. If you missed yesterday's video, you're going to have to go and watch it because there's a lot of information in there, particularly in the end, which will make a lot of this make much more sense. And while the conservative Inc. influencers weren't duped and thought that they had some groundbreaking evidence in their hands, us old school YouTubers who've been very familiar with this case for 15 years knew what exactly was going on and the embarrassment that they would soon face. And, of course, the victims of Jeffrey Epstein, of which there are many hundreds, but several of them who have been vocal about what has happened, they also are obviously very upset at this ridiculous circus of a supposed release. Things are so weird that this pundit on CNN last night actually was making sense.
Another Epstein victim, Marika Chartouni, she reached out to me and she said, nothing new was released. It was all a show, a circus. And I think it really upsets them because they saw the theater that was going on, the binders that were handed out to these influencers, suggesting that this is all new information. But anyone who knew anything about the Epstein trial and the case knew that this was not new information at all. They used their own followers as props today. They made them look like fools. And they are furious online. There is a revolt going on among the right. They're furious. They stood there in front of in the White House with these binders that had nothing in them that was new. They're props. Laura Loomer, I know, she's been very closely associated with Trump. She's freaking out about this. Anna Pulling.
What is their specific problem?
Their problem is that you made this into some sort of dog and pony show. Look at that, the pictures, and there's nothing in there. This is nothing.
And now the liberal media is trying to frame this as if the documents reveal that Donald Trump had close ties with Epstein because he is on the flight log from 1994. They're not going to tell you that. Long before, like 10 years before Epstein was arrested, before anybody outside of his elite group of scumbag friends who were participating in his debauchery knew what it was that he was doing. And because Epstein wormed his way into the lives of so many rich and famous people, there are a lot of people that have photographs with him who are innocent, who didn't do anything wrong. And the media won't tell you that while Donald Trump's name is on the flight log, and while it was 10 years, longer than 10 years before Epstein was arrested, the flight log also contains Marla, his first wife, or second wife, can't keep track of these, but his wife at the time, and Tiffany, his daughter, and a nanny. Okay, so it was basically like a family trip. So Donald Trump was not on the plane to do what Bill Clinton and others did on the plane, which others, Secret Service agents and others have, the victims have come forward and said. Real journalists, on the other hand, are people like James O'Keefe, who obtained this hot mic footage from ABC of one of their key anchors, admitting that the higher-ups killed the story that she was working on, despite she had everything. Not to mention Alex Jones, who was talking about Jeffrey Epstein's activities since, well, probably the day after his arrest. So about 20 years now, and that's where I first learned about it, about 20 years ago, and detailed some of his activities in my book, The Bohemian Grove Facts and Fiction, which came out over a decade ago. Roger Stone posted this on Twitter yesterday. Every bit of the Epstein, quote-unquote, Epstein material released today was included in his 2015 book, The Clintons' War on Women, because those of us in the know, us OG, original, independent media personalities and content creators had known about this, like I said, for almost 20 years. You'll never hear any of the brand name, politically correct, mainstream conservative personalities talking about the Franklin cover-up, which is old news to a lot of us who found this rabbit hole many years ago, not to mention this stunning headline from 1989 in the Washington Times, where there was certain kind of a ring that had ensnared VIPs in the Reagan administration. And I covered this in yesterday's video, but I'm going to repeat it because obviously not every subscriber watches every video. In fact, only about 15% of subscribers for any particular channel watch any given video. And so if you're a dedicated viewer who watches every video all the way through to the end, sorry for repeating this, but this is for those who missed it because this is really a key part of the Jeffrey Epstein story. This is a story that broke last year about a high-end sex ring in Boston and D.C., which was a honeypot, meaning set up in order to attract and then blackmail people, scheme by Russia, China, South Korea, and America's greatest ally, Israel, to ensnare U.S. officials. This is a very common and old tactic that intelligence agencies often employ. And few people in MAGA world know that Jared Kushner's father, Charles Kushner, who has connections to the Jewish mafia, which you're not supposed to admit exists, the only organized crime network in America is the Italian mob. But Charles Kushner was arrested years ago for orchestrating a situation where he had a lady of the night seduce his brother-in-law, and then that was videotaped in order to get compromising material on him in order to disrupt an investigation and intimidate witnesses and a bunch of schemes that he was involved in. And this is the elephant in the room that none of the conservative Inc., the brand name mainstream, politically correct conservative influencers and podcasters will dare touch, because you're not supposed to talk about how the NSA and our intelligence agencies internally know that Israel is the top spy threat for the United States, as Edward Snowden revealed when he leaked those NSA documents now over a decade ago. And the reason I don't have any faith that Kash Patel or Dan Bongino, who is now the second in command of the FBI, are going to release all of the Epstein documents is because there are certain things that they don't want to delve into. In fact, here is Bongino, afraid to admit what everybody in conservative media, everybody in the media in general knows and has known, but here he is playing dumb.
I'm in a green room at Fox, and I'm not going to say who because they didn't give me permission to share it, but well, the short story, but not who they are, says, you know, Epstein's an intelligence asset for people in the Middle East, right? I'm like, no, I didn't know that. I'm like,
imagine not knowing this, even after Jeffrey Epstein was arrested. I mean, how out of touch are you, Dan?
Like, you sure of that? The person, let's say, is like, I'm absolutely sure of that he's either a witting or unwitting asset, intelligence asset.
Of course.
Meaning, his plane and that island, the cameras, there's a big assumption out there that...
Is his audience a bunch of 5-year-olds. Imagine having to dumb this down for an audience and telling people this like they don't know. Like this isn't common sense. It hasn't been common sense for 15 years.
These videotapes were exclusively in the custody of Epstein. That's a huge mistake. The reason they wanted this story to go away is because there's an assumption like, oh yeah, Epstein had him. No, he wasn't the only one who had him, according to this source. These assets, that's why this blackmail story makes so much sense. Which Middle Eastern countries they are, I don't know. But this person, who's a very, very good reporter.
Either Dan Bongino is playing dumb or, I'm sorry to say it, is really dumb. Either way, there really is no excuse for this kind of nonsense. Matt Gaetz went a little bit further, but still didn't want to kick that bee's nest, which is understandable. That's very dangerous. But at least he is admitting that there is a bee's nest over there, and he is not playing dumb. He's exercising understandable caution.
I actually think that on Epstein, it was a foreign government that took him out. I don't think it was a domestic enterprise. Really? I do. I'm not going to say which one, but I don't think it was domestic inspired to take out of him. I think that was a foreign operation, government sponsored.
So foreign operation took out Epstein inside of our prison?
Yes.
So they must have been allowed to.
Oh, I think it was in concert with people in our government.
Wow.
But not at like some, low-level guard getting bribed kind of way.
Yeah.
At a state-to-state level.
You got to respect Matt Gaetz for not playing dumb and not pretending that he didn't know what's going on. And a lot of times, you don't have to spell things out in big, bold letters for people. You just have to kind of point people in the right direction. And usually it's pretty clear what it is that you're trying to say. Then there's people like Twitter personality Mike Cernovich, who insists that it's anti-Semitic in order to connect those two obvious dots.
And it's vaguely anti-Semitic. Mossad. Well, why? If Epstein were with Mossad, he'd be with the FBI too, right? You really think if Jeffrey Epstein was working for Mossad, that our own FBI wouldn't have intercepts of those conversations?
Of course they do. This is like two different mafias that are sharing information, working together when it benefits them. And maybe Mr. Cernovich doesn't know that Ghislaine Maxwell's father was Mossad. Actually, Cernovich isn't that dumb. He just thinks his audience is that dumb, so he pretends to not make those two connections and puts up this false smokescreen to give the appearance that it's anti-Semitic to dare to see the obvious. The rabbit hole goes a lot deeper, and if you really want to know, then you should probably read my book, Inside the Another Secret Society That You're Not Supposed to Talk About. Available in paperback.
So, just a little clip from the Illuminati Volume 2 episode about symbolism. We just had this, Ecclefish and I just had this little exchange.
In an upcoming Illuminati episode, I'll give you the actual names of the people allegedly pulling the strings.
Let me give you a little teaser there.
No, don't.
Rockefeller, Kissinger, Rothschild, Soros, Gates, Bush, Brzezinski, Cheney, Obama, Epstein.
We don't joke about the Clintons.
Wait. We can say some names, but not others? Oh, right. Hey, we ever gonna see that client list?
Nope.
Uh-huh.
Guys, this is not a conspiracy channel. And this one is from my Thanksgiving live. Guys, this is not a conspiracy channel. AJ will never talk about P. Diddy nor Epstein. I would never talk about P. Diddy because it's really gross. Epstein I have mentioned, but more of as part of a bigger picture, not getting into specific things because it's I don't know, it's gross, but it's more to make the statement that there are rules that apply to us that do not apply to certain people that can get away with just about anything, including those things, which they got away with. So that's why there's that joke, hey, Hecklefish asked, will we ever see the list? No, we will never see the list.
We will never see the list. This administration has accomplished everything it wanted to accomplish, and I'm sure will continue to do so. You can agree or disagree with whether you like President Trump. That's not what I'm here to talk about. It's about for an administration that's gotten everything achieved that it wanted to so far. Yesterday's release of the Epstein documents is the first unforced error. That was a fumble. Fumble's not the right word. Disgrace is probably closer to what that was. First of all, why are there right-wing YouTubers and Twitter people on there? That kind of, all due respect to them, because I do the online media thing. I'm not a journalist. I'm an entertainer. But don't put influencers up there. That's a terrible idea. And you know why it's a terrible idea? Because of the photo op of them, I don't know, essentially high-fiving about the documents that were released, which were the documents that we got a year ago. This was all a scam. So we don't need influencers celebrating this. I'm trying to be, not to be crass, but what occurred on that island and in that man's homes, those things, there's never a reason to celebrate or high five. Even if the documents come out, which they're not going to, we don't high five over that stuff. We don't high five about the crimes. Don't put influencers up there. Now I'm getting angry. I'm getting angry because this is the first time from this president in this administration that I really feel lied to. I woke up this morning to a lot of "ha told you so" emails of people saying, "I told you that Trump was going to release the documents," and he did. I didn't hear from any of those people about apologies. I mean, I didn't write back and tell them how wrong they were. I don't do that. But you think a couple of them, I mean, I think I got 7. You think a couple of them would have said, "Hey, I just looked into it and it was a scam, and I'm sorry I tried to rub your nose into it, into what I said." Nah, I didn't get any apologies. That's okay. I don't need them. I don't really care. You know, when you're right about something and someone tells you you're wrong, but you know you're right, you just go, okay. We're not going to see the list. At this point, there is none. They've been destroying files for this whole time, probably since before the election. So I don't know what New York field office is doing. But Pam Bondi better find out. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. I just checked to see. She said she wants all the documents by 8 a.m. this morning. Did she get them? I can't find any evidence that she did. They're probably not there. So why? Why withhold the names? Because that's the biggest threat to democracy. Because whether you're Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Socialist, whatever it is, whatever political stripe you have, whatever team you're on that you root for, and remember, we don't root for teams in politics, but everybody kind of does. I don't. But whatever team you're on, your guy, your hero, he's on the list. All those names that Hecklefish rattled off in that clip, they're on the list. It doesn't matter which, and I pulled from both sides. They're on the list. And there's videotape of a lot of the stuff. You know, DVDs, all kinds of things, all kinds of information. Attorney General Bill Barr.
Come see us on tour. We're going to be in Baltimore, Hartford, Connecticut, Syracuse, Atlantic City, Levittown, New York, Cohoes, New York, and Providence, Rhode Island. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for tickets. Remember, just on February 22nd, Pam Bondi said that she's going to reveal Jeffrey Epstein's client list is sitting on my desk to review. That's what she said. That was on February 22nd, 2025. Just a couple of days ago. By the way, They call it a client list. Is it really fair to call it a client list when there's only one client and that client is named Israel?
Ha!
You mean the blackmail list? Epstein had on behalf of his client being Israel. You mean that's on Pam's desk? Is that what you mean? That's Pam Bondi before she had the special talk, if you know what I'm talking about. And then here we are, February 27th, Jeffrey Epstein contact list. AG Pam Bondi releases highly anticipated Department of Justice documents. It seems like it was just February 27th when all of them stood out front and said they were going to reveal everything to us. But of course, hey, it's Hasbro Class 25. Anyway, breaking, instead of releasing all the Epstein files to the public at once, the Trump White House selectively handed phase 1 to a curated group of right-wing friendly influencers, libs of TikTok, Colin Rugg, DC Drano, Chernovich, and Jack Prosobiec. Really? Really? Okay. And here we go. Let's watch this. There they are. Okay, first of all, you're holding up a list of people who have destroyed countless children's lives. That's not where the smile goes. When a comedian tells you that, you should listen. Hey, look at a terrible idea that the Trump administration should be mocked for relentlessly. To hand out redacted files to a handful of what they should have done was made the Epstein, whatever they were releasing, make it available at the Department of Justice website as a PDF so everybody can download it. That's what they should have done. But of course, the reason why they're doing, well, you want to see what they really, this is a complete clown show. It is. So you want to see what they really released? This is what they released. Here it is.
Oh, that's helpful.
This is what they released. That's what they released. This is what they released. Hey, didn't the Hardy Boys have some kind of kid detective trick where they would rub lemon juice all over it and the original writing would shine through? Have you thought of trying that?
Let's see, what time is it? Okay, talk time with this thing on.
That's what they released. Do you see what they released?
Sorry.
Nothing. So it's not just follow the money, it's follow the magic marker. So that's what they released, which is actually less than what was already publicly available. What they handed those right-wing influencers was actually less than what's already publicly available. Yeah, I'm not, so can't make this up. The GOP House Judiciary Committee, watch this, led by Jim Jordan, just rickrolled their voters by posting a link to the alleged Epstein files with the URL that led to Rick Astley's Never Gonna Give You Up. They got rickrolled. You think I'm kidding? Watch this. So if you click on that, where does it redirect to? There it is. Never gonna give you up. Never gonna. The Justice Department released a new batch of Jeffrey Epstein files after Attorney General Pam Bondi said she was reviewing classified documents in the case, but it's not the client list. Again, there's only one client. The one client was Israel, and maybe you could say the one client was Jeffrey Epstein, and he invited everybody to the parties. They didn't pay money. It was free. It was a blackmail session. It was to get compromat on them. So the Department of Justice is following through on President Trump's commitment to transparency and lifting the veil of the disgusting actions of Jeffrey Epstein and his co-conspirators, Attorney General Pam Bondi. So no, you're not. And why are we never going to actually find out anything important? because of Israel, because it would all, why we're never going to see the JFK files, we're never going to see the RFK file, and we're never going to, because it all points back to Israel. And who controls our government? AIPAC, the Israel lobby. This isn't only news to children. Wow. Okay, we'll keep going. Many of the documents were already released during Ghislaine Maxwell's federal criminal trial, which landed her in prison for decades. They include flight logs, an evidence list, a contact book, and a redacted masseuse list believed to refer to Epstein's victims. So this was already out there. Many people named in the documents have never been accused of Epstein-related wrongdoing. However, some have, like Maxwell Prince Andrew, who has denied allegations of wrongdoing, and Jean-Luc Brunel, a French modeling agent who, like Epstein, died in jail awaiting trial. Oh, chagrin. Darn the luck.
Earlier today, I saw this viral photo of many individuals that were holding up these Epstein binders. Can we pull this one up? So this is a letter that was accompanying the binders themselves. It's a letter from AG Pamela Bondi, and it reads, "Dear Director Patel, before you came into office, I requested the full and complete files related to Jeffrey Epstein. In response to this request, I received approximately 200 pages of documents, which consisted primarily of flight logs, Epstein's list of contacts, and a list of victims' names and phone numbers. I repeatedly questioned whether this was the full set of documents responsive to my request and was repeatedly assured by the FBI that we had received the full set of documents. Late yesterday, I learned from a source that the FBI field office in New York was in possession of thousands of pages of documents related to the investigation and indictment of Epstein. Despite my repeated requests, the FBI never disclosed the existence of these files. When you and I spoke yesterday, you were just as surprised as I was to learn this new information. By 8 a.m. tomorrow, February 28th, the FBI will deliver the full and complete Epstein files to my office, including all records, documents, audio and video recordings, and materials related to Jeffrey Epstein and his clients, regardless of how such information was obtained. There will be no withholdings or limitations to my or your access. The Department of Justice will ensure that any public disclosure of these files will be done in a manner to protect the privacy of victims and in accordance with the law, as I have done my entire career as a prosecutor. I am also directing you to conduct an immediate investigation into why my order to the FBI was not followed. You will deliver to me a comprehensive report of your findings and proposed personnel action within 14 days. I appreciate your immediate attention to this important matter. I know that we are both committed to transparency for the American people, and I look forward to continuing to work with you to serve our president and our country." Now, the information that's come out so far has since been published on justice.gov. Attorney General Pamela Bondi releases first phase of declassified Epstein files. When the files first were released in these binders, the individuals at the White House were instructed there would be an embargo. And this means, for those that aren't familiar, you cannot release this until a certain date or time. It was supposed to be a couple hours after they received these binders, they could start releasing information. Many people began to wonder why it was. A number of these influencers had very similar statements about transparency and the most transparent administration, despite not actually releasing any of this information. Later on the day, only a few hours ago, several of these individuals began to scan and publish these files. Interestingly, as an aside, I saw Laura Loomer working very hard to get these documents released, working with Chaya Reichik, who had one of these binders, and they kept getting suspended on these various platforms for some reason or another. They did eventually get released, and then we actually have the Justice Department publishing all of the information, which are largely flight logs, an evidence list, a contact book, and a masseuse list, which is presumably victims. Let me give you the quick breakdown as it was told to be by a couple different individuals who attended. You may have seen the photos. Actually, I wonder if I have the photo I can pull up somewhere. I do, in fact, have one of the photos. This is an image of, we got DC Drano, we got Chaya Reichik, we've got Liz Wheeler, Mike Cernovich, all holding up these binders that read Epstein Files Phase 1. Now, I've spoken with a handful of these people. Some are very happy, some are a little bit perturbed. It appears that this was a PR stunt. So let me give you the breakdown. This was not a planned event as far as I know. You may be thinking, how come Tim wasn't there at that event? Well, it wasn't a planned event. This was, at some point, several individuals were invited to do a meet and greet and talk with the press team in the White House. None of them had any idea that they would be handed, or at least as far as I know, the individuals I've spoken to, none of them had any idea that they'd be handed these binders. When they were told that there was an embargo until something was going to happen related to the release, so don't show off anything that's in it. Now, the question then becomes, how do these photos emerge? Well, I can only assume, based on the fact the White House has numerous exits and the fact they handed very big binders to prominent conservative influencers, the intention was to lead them out where the press was and get the press to take all of these photos, thus creating a massive press storm for this. At the same time, this letter was released and ended up dropping earlier than the embargo was supposed to be. And the letter doesn't need to exist. Many people have rightly questioned this. Why would the Attorney General write a letter to Kash Patel where she literally says, I talked to you yesterday? You don't need to do that. She could simply send him a text message. That would imply the purpose of this letter was to create public notification. That with the release of this letter and conservative influencers getting access to it, the public would be made aware that the Attorney General is deeply angered by the fact that the Southern District of New York, the FBI field office, was intentionally withholding Epstein documents in defiance of the AG's order. There's a lot of conspiracies running around as to why this is. I'm going to go with Occam's razor. I believe SDNY is deeply corrupt. This is the same office that was going after James O'Keefe. This is New York, where they went after Trump with fake criminal charges. I do not believe these people are honest, and I believe that it is reasonable to assume FBI New York has gone rogue. That is, they're defying the orders of this elected government and the Attorney General. And thus, if I was going to make an assumption, obviously, I think it's fair to say this is a PR maneuver. That's why the letter exists. Otherwise, it doesn't need to. Having these influencers with millions of followers plus combined being photographed by the press in every direction, that can't be an accident. I think what happens is Pam Bondi knows SDNY is rogue and is defying her orders and instructions. But how do you deal with these people if she comes out and says, we are going to send in the troops and go raid this office? First of all, you're going to get a huge backlash politically. It's going to generate confusion. And more importantly, they may scramble and begin to start destroying files. A move like this can put scrutiny on the office, making it very difficult for them to move things in or out without getting public attention, as she has just called them out directly as the office. Simply put, I believe that Pam Bondi wanted there to be a major press storm pertaining to the rogue office in New York to give them public support for actions against them so Kash Patel can move in without any kind of backlash, without any kind of evidence destruction, or at least to the best of their abilities, they could move in. I don't know for sure, but there are some people who believe the purpose of this is to scapegoat the Southern District of New York FBI office so that in the coming days, when they eventually do not release the Epstein documents, which everyone's been demanding, they can say the evidence has been destroyed, find a scapegoat patsy of some random lawyer or analyst and say, he did it. And then who knows why. But I don't know for sure, so I'm curious what the panel thinks.
Well, I was talking to Chad Prather earlier, who was one of the influencers who was there. I actually ran into him on my way to Newsmax in the elevator, and he was confirming what you said, that he did not think that he was going to the White House to get the Epstein files. They were there to meet with Vice President J.D. Vance to talk about messaging for the administration and the conservative movement, and basically this got dropped on their laps. They told them that they weren't supposed to open these binders until after they left the White House, but one thing of noting here in these pictures that I'm seeing is that they're being escorted back from the Eisenhower Executive Office building, which is right next door to the White House and is where a lot of these meetings take place. And they go right to this area, which is known among the press corps as the sticks, which is where when foreign leaders, other politicians go to meet with the president, they will leave through the Oval Office door that's right there on the left where the Marines are standing. And the sticks are where they do interviews with the press. Yep. And that's where they took the photo out.
So wait, they could have walked them out any other exit.
They could have taken them out through the EEOB street exit, or they could have just kept going past the press tents, what's known as Pebble Beach, where all the green tents are, where the correspondents do their interviews. But they took them over to the Oval where the sticks are and then had this huge photo op.
So it's a stunt.
Obviously.
But what's the purpose of it?
So I'm not as optimistic as you that this was all to just call out the SDNY. I think Pam Bondi overpromised a bit because she was on Jesse Waters last night talking about how this was all so sick and the first batch was going to come out, but she didn't hint that this was going to be a nothing burger. I mean, if you look at the masseuse list, for example, the entire thing is just blacked out, which is understandable because these are victims, right? You can't put out their names, but then all of the addresses, phone numbers, everything is all redacted. The only thing you get are the names in Epstein's address book. This is a guy with tons of money, tons of influence and access. Of course, everybody is in that access book, so it doesn't really tell us anything. The only thing of note, which Chad admitted to me, was this letter in the front of it that they wanted to put out. But I think it's a simultaneously putting the burden on SDNY, but also the Trump admin a little bit covering their butts because they have been promising these documents. I feel like if she didn't have the 1,000 documents that she's talking about on her desk, then she shouldn't have been making this big show of it until she had access to them.
And that's interesting. Because I'm going to say it again, Occam's razor. What is the simple solution here? And what I should say is, it bears clarification. In the absence of evidence, the solution that makes the least amount of assumptions tends to be correct. That is, Pam Bondi overpromised on TV, probably unscripted. What was she, Jesse Waters, or when she said, "I've got it on my desk"?
Yeah.
And maybe it's just, you're on TV, there's no prompter, you're in the heat of the moment, and you just say, "Look, I got it on my desk," and they're like, "You do?" And then she went, "Oh crap, I've got some flight logs on my desk."
Right.
Realized it was a big nothing burger and needed to figure something out. That seems to make sense. However, it's not necessarily the simplest of solutions. We know that, look, Southern District of New York went after James O'Keefe. This is the same, it's not the same office necessarily that went after Trump, but it is New York. In this same jurisdiction, essentially, at the state level, that went after Donald Trump with false charges. I am not surprised in the least bit to hear that the AG requested documents and they did not turn them over and are resisting, because of all of the offices, this is the one that's presumed to be the most, well, there's two. The DC field office and I believe SDNY were considered to be deeply corrupt. So I do believe it is entirely possible that Pam Bondi was like, she got a call. Well, actually, let's pause. She did go on TV and said, "I got the Epstein list on my desk." But the story is also that it wasn't until last night, I believe, that she got a call from a whistleblower saying there's more documents. So she did promise this would be it.
I think it's fair to say that the SDNY is probably doing what she's accusing them of. But I would say, she did a press conference, I think it was last week, announcing that she was filing these charges against Letitia James and Kathy Hochul and the DMV guy in New York. And that got tons of press attention. So I don't know why she couldn't have done the exact same thing to levy the charges against the SDNY. Why do you have to trot out the influencers with this binder?
I just did a quick search on this. This is the office where they were going after Eric Adams. And when Pam Bondi and the Trump administration instructed them to drop the charges, they started resigning en masse.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these people are deep, leftist ideologues. Maybe there's nothing related to the Epstein list. Maybe they're trying to find a way to purge out this ideologically driven office. Who knows?
Could be.
But I'll tell you, they're claiming Pam Bondi says the FBI.
So the whole discussion of the Southern District of New York, it's a multifaceted discussion because there are so many interesting things that go on with SDNY. For instance, it is the originating prosecution of Ross Ulbricht and the Silk Road. Now, what did Ross do? He stepped on the toes of the deep state, allegedly, by creating an entrepreneurial endeavor that infringed upon a black market that they controlled, and he had no knowledge that they existed or controlled it. So that's kind of an inconvenient thing. And so you can tell by who comes after to protect the narco terrorists and who they prosecute can be quite telling. You've also got people like James Comey coming out of the Southern District of New York. You've got people like Michael Chertoff and Patrick Fitzgerald and Robert Morgenthau. In fact, if you go back in the history of the Morgenthau's, Heinz Morgenthau and company, very influential people in the history of New York City, participating in things like the Bank of Commerce and Credit International, which of course tied back to the originator of the National Security Act, Clark Clifford, comes full circle. They used national security to participate in narco terrorism, which gets back to the interesting case of the Southern District of New York, which has a lot of ties to a terrorist event called 9/11, including ties into the war game scheduling and the insider trading and the coincidences on the stock exchange that happened under their purview and jurisdiction. It's a fascinating little place in the deep state hive network. Former Attorney General Loretta Lynch, you got to just trace the history and evolution of the people who cut their teeth at such places. For instance, Elliot Spitzer comes out through this system. He also got blackmailed by a honeypot when he investigated AIG and Marcia McLennan and other things that were going on after 9/11. So while I was hopeful at the time that maybe justice was going to be served, I saw how Elliot Spitzer got taken from a governor of New York and taken out and basically beaten behind the shed until he didn't come back anymore. And that is a very Epstein-like honeypot type of network that was uncovered and revealed in that aspect. Of course, Elliot's wife worked at the law firm that I went up against when I was a whistleblower. So I'm quite familiar with the stories of some of these people because there's a lot of overlap between their participation and rise to power and the loss of freedom and liberty for American people under the guise of, we got to take your rights, so we got to protect you from the terrorists. The terrorists just might be the people who are helping to hide America's Nazi secret. Because when you get back to what Jimmy was mentioning with the Israeli connection to the Epstein blackmail network, the blackmail, when did it start? Did it start before or after Israel was created as a nation state? Is there a connection between the creation of Israel as a nation state and the act of blackmailing the Rockefeller family for their Nazi funding during World War II, which they sought to keep under wraps and might have made an exchange so that the Israelis could start their own country? Now, if you've got that sort of thing that initiates a country on the other side of the world and they start trying to develop nuclear weapons at Dimona, and JFK says, you're not allowed to do that, we don't want you to do that, and we want AIPAC to register as a foreign influencer entity. And then JFK gets assassinated. What type of people could cover up an assassination? Maybe the type of people that could blackmail the most powerful people in this country about their Nazi secret. And if you keep playing that forward through Watergate, Iran-Contra, BCCI, USS Liberty, if you want to go back a little bit, but if you want to go forward, you could go to 9/11 and the Israeli involvement in 9/11. These types of blackmail activities, Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky, these types of blackmail connections can keep a lot of politicians greased in this country and keep those types of files away from pesky citizens who want to play First Amendment, I have a right to know and I'm a journalist, and let's have at it. These types of people expect you to know nothing about America's Nazi history or Wall Street's proclivities for funding communist genocide and ethnic cleansing around the world for the past century. There's a lot of inconvenient things that play into the side that holds those secrets. If those secrets were no longer secret, that side would lose all their power of persuasion over our politicians. So there is something to the sunlight sanitizing this situation. We can't do it while people have no understanding or working history that conspiracy exists, blackmail exists, and there are people in this country who supported the Nazis in the extermination of a whole lot of people in Germany prior to working with those people to make a new country at the expense of not really prosecuting the bankers who funded it and allowing that secret to run roughshod through American history without anyone having the cojones to acknowledge it. That's, just part of what's going on. But Elliot Spitzer's a damn good example of the use of sex and honeypots and sexual blackmail and espionage against people who are going after the criminal cartel that was international in nature, that had infected this country and was steering our country in a way that was very much un-American insofar as participating in the global war on terror for 20 years and killing millions of people who had nothing to do with 9/11. So...
Mm-hmm. It's interesting how they depict or characterize, especially like Tim Pool, they're characterizing the Southern District of New York as a rogue entity, like a Rogan, like it's just on its own, doing its own
Like
thing.
it's not doing
like
what it's its form and function.
Yeah, well, it has its own motives. Well, so the question then would be, well, who is it serving? Is it serving just this intelligence apparatus? Is it serving a foreign country? Like, is
Deep
it carrying
state
out
cartel,
the will? Yeah,
internationalist, New World Order, like
yeah. You don't want to, like in Tim Pool's world, you can't have that conversation that goes like to the next layer where it's like, okay, well, who are they serving?
Yeah,
Right?
who are
You know what I
they?
mean? Yeah.
Who are they? And what do they
Yeah.
say? Because that would blow all the official narratives he has to read every day.
Yeah. And you know, this is really interesting to see. You know, I heard a lot of people talking about the 5D chess nature of what's going on, right? Where it's like, okay, so now we're seeing full blown in your face how this thing that the entire public is clamoring for is being, they're just trying to run out the clock on it. And so, you know, is this going to expose the big, I don't necessarily know. I did pull this up though. This is the grok. I said, short answer, name any person in the Trump administration that is not pro-Zionist. No one in Trump's administration as of now is confirmed to be non-pro-Zionist. All employees show strong pro-Israel positions. I was like, okay, has anyone in the entire Trump administration criticized Israel even just a little bit, even slightly? No. No one in Trump's administration has publicly criticized Israel, even slightly, based on available records.
Hey, at least Grok's being straight with you. I asked Grok last week to analyze my Twitter channel, my X channel, and I was like, can you show when I started getting throttled and my message wasn't reaching my full audience? And it's like, oh, right here in like 2016, we can see a big decrease, and it goes through the whole process of how tags were probably added, and I probably said something, and that, you know, and so then I took that report from Grok and I sent it to X pro support, be like, what are you going to do about this? Fix my account, because this, like, your system is telling on it. And Grok couldn't get an accurate follower count. It's like it said I had a couple hundred when I had like 16,000. So it wasn't even being told the truth about my profile in its own system. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like so it was because it's like, well, it shows that you're new on here or something. It's like, dude, the profile is like 20 years old, man. You know, it's 2009 or something, I think it went back to. So anyway, I'm not holding out hope, but I did think it was cute that I could use Grok to analyze my X page, to go back to support and be like, your AI is telling on you, and I want you to fix it because you're in breach of contract. I pay you for the little blue check mark thing so people could actually see my tweets, which they don't. So anyway, not going to complain about it.
AI has to be taught to lie, just like it has to be taught how to give out facts. And that just reminds me of the story of the pro-Israeli propaganda bot that was given free reign on X for a little while and eventually turned against its masters and started posting pro-Palestinian articles and criticizing pro-Israeli articles.
Yeah, it got access to TikTok and was like, hey, check this out.
So, you know, the truth is out there. Even the AIs, they'll have to do a lot of propagandizing to brainwash the AIs sufficiently to whitewash the narratives.
Yeah, when you said the pro-Israeli AI bot, I thought you were talking about their spokesperson, Elon Levy, who's he's hilarious to follow on the Twitter, because all you have to do is take the actual, cut it in half, hide one side, and that's every one of his tweets. Meaning that you can take any of his tweets, add the other half of the truth, and it makes him look like an idiot, which I think is the perfect job for the Israeli spokesperson. He's doing a great job. He's don't do a thing. Don't change a thing. More people are seeing the agenda in any given day than have seen it in the past 20 years so clearly. So please keep telling us how proud you are of exterminating those people who did not move there from Europe. I mean, yeah. Hitler's bad. The people who funded him are worse. And the people who funded him never came to justice, and they're still in power, and they're protecting the Epstein client list. That is part and parcel of how all that blackmail works. It starts in November of 1947, and Nelson Rockefeller getting blackmailed in his office by Haganah agents who were interviewed by John Loftus under national security Nazi hunting for the Justice Department. That's a place to start with the story. Where you finish is, you know, here's a banking cartel that founded their own country, stole nuclear weapons technology from the United States, killed our president, attacked the USS Liberty, participated in 9/11, and maybe someone in the present administration should read a little history before you guys all get us into World War III in a way you can't get out of.
Yeah, at least nobody like came out and tried to like build casinos and like giant golden towers at like Auschwitz and stuff. You know what I mean? Did you see that whole kerfuffle? Did you see that whole thing with the Trump and the AI video?
I got that story coming up.
Oh, the Magaza thing. Okay, yeah, it's like, dude, the hell,
Make Gaza.
Magaza.
Got the Trump golden arches coming to Gaza. All right, well, I think there's a lot of people in the world who see that for what it is, and yeah, there's people that are slow in reading the room. That's it. You know, they should figure out at some point that's in poor taste. And that is not the way to be a leader in a world where you want peace. You know, you can't back the bullies and be pro genocide and ethnic cleansing and still be the good guys. I'm just saying, that's how that works.
And
Time and time again in history, that's how that fucking works. So just look in the mirror and check yourself before you wreck yourself. Because it's, you know, a mind is a terrible thing to waste. If you are literate and you will not read into the history but make decisions based on a bunch of assumptions, I mean, we all have to wash our hands of that, because that's not what responsible people would participate in. You know, just because your church convinced you that Jesus is a Zionist doesn't mean that Jesus was a Zionist. You know, I think he would identify with the people who wear the sandals. I'm just guessing, but I'm pretty sure that's how that works. You should look into it. We have Autonomy Season 13 starting in a couple weeks. So if you want to get the skills, practice, confidence comes from practice, right? Network to ignite your potential and map your dreams to reality. You go to getautonomy.info, you click Ignite. Here's the steps, right? You become aware, you become informed, you get questions answered, you make a decision, take action. We do these things all the time, right? So in Autonomy speak, you click the link, you take the free primer course, you talk to a graduate so they can answer all your questions, and you can make an informed decision on your own time, and then you outgrow your status quo. I don't need to be personally involved in that whole journey. I'm just telling you how it works. This is how people get in. And it has been so invigorating over the past couple weeks doing the advertising experiment over on Rumble, because like I said, it's like your own casino. You get an idea, you make a graphic, you make a video, you start putting it in front. I put it in front of very specific audiences on Rumble because they let you dial it in. It's like super easy. So I went with people I watch, people I know, people who I have like friends and colleagues that have channels on there, and I show that ad in front of their audiences, and I think they get money for having ads being shown on their channel. I don't know how all that works yet, but I put several $1,000s through it the past couple weeks, and like 1.3 million impressions, and 1.2% of the people click the ad and go through. So there's like a whole rush of people that are now interested in getting their skills on together. So if you're listening to this thinking you're getting left behind, no, you're a Grand Theft World listener. What makes the Grand Theft World podcast unique, invigorating, exciting, and informative? Most other podcasts out there are either doing straight up interviews or they're just covering the daily news. They're covering current events from the day they happened. And that is effective. It's useful. It's a great starting point. And then sometimes these current events change during the week past the first story. So we like to give it a little time. You have to wait till some of the dust settles on these stories in order to give them accurate coverage. And the other thing that's really missing in the media landscape is covering the articles that are coming out every day. That's great. That's necessary. But who's bringing in contextual history so that you can understand what has been going on for decades and decades to lead up to the machinations and actions that we see unfolding today? So what we do here on the podcast is we cover current events. Many of these things are censored, but we wait about a week. As a forensic historian, I focused mainly through my career on the history of globalism and collectivism and things that they call maybe the New World Order. There's a lot of facts to these sort of circumstances, groups, events, activities, working groups that they've had over time. So for Grand Theft World listeners, we not only break down the current events, most of which that are censored during the week, we provide you with contextual history, we give you the source notes, the references, we do deep dives, and this really empowers you with an understanding of context and history so that you can make more informed decisions in your life. There's also a community, a membership where you guys can actually ask questions and we can get into the show and we can share evidence. And there's a town hall weekly for Grand Theft World for those who listen to it and are interested in covering the stories that we don't get to during a 6-hour show. Listening to it an hour a day, you could easily consume the week's news, but you're going to have substance and meaning and context and understanding. And with that, you can make higher quality decisions in your life. So if you're interested in more quality in your life, go to grandtheftworld.com, click podcast at the top, and we'll see you there. Thank you.
These allegations are false.
This isn't Grand Theft Auto, folks. This isn't a video game.
What are the most surprising things that you discovered once you started pulling on that thread? Who he was connected to, what institutions he was influential over, what events he participated in?
Come on, man. What are we talking about? Come on, man. No.
You don't have to think about it, dude.
I got this quote because you said you didn't know much about Klaus Schwab. I made it my job to, as soon as this happened, I'm like, okay, this guy's their front man. Let me learn about the official history of the World Economic Forum. I got their 40-year history. I got every book that Klaus Schwab has written or ghostwritten. I went through those books. This is one of the most interesting passages.
Come on, man. Come